All right, so get this. The M1 Mac Mini is one of the best pieces of technology I've ever used. Let's talk about why I'm returning it. So I purchased the Mac Mini as my primary video editing rig. Nothing else comes close, in this price range especially, to the performance that I'm getting out of this chip. It's insane. Every single claim that Apple has made about this chip is true, and they may even be selling it a little bit short. This is absolutely the fastest machine you can get in this price point, bar none. There is no competition. It's not even close. Even if you're willing to spend double what I paid for this system, you can't beat it. I don't think it's possible for me to overstate the speed of this machine. I am primarily a filmmaker, and I do a lot of wedding films, I do a lot of commercials, and the speed with which I was able to complete some of these jobs with this machine versus anything that I've used previous was absolutely wild to me. There are certain effects that I will put on top of a clip, for example, stabilization, and it happens almost immediately now. I never had trouble previously with even an underpowered machine in Final Cut. It's incredibly optimized, but everything that was good about those earlier machines is even better now on the M1 chip. Despite the performance of this machine exceeding all of my expectations, I had two major categories of gripes. The first of those gripes is very much tied to the M1 chip and its graphics processing unit. The second set of gripes is more of an OS X related thing, and I'm sure it'll make some Apple people kind of upset, but I just don't like the way that they handle certain things. We'll cover that in just a little bit. Let's talk about this external monitor problem. I've used a Samsung 32-inch monitor for my primary display for a few years now, and it's been really, really great. One of the first issues I ran into was trying to connect the display to the Mac Mini. When using a cheaper HDMI cable, it doesn't generally have enough throughput for what is kind of a weird resolution. The display is 1440p. So I went and got a very nice HDMI cable that handles 48 gigabits per second of throughput. Worked great, and it eliminated all of the issues I was having with a cheaper cable. The screen was flashing, I had some weird lines across the screen, and it would occasionally just go out. It would go black. The next issue was a little more profound, and it's an ongoing distracting issue that I don't think Apple has even acknowledged as of recording this video. Anytime that I was using the computer with a darker background, for example in Final Cut or even on YouTube, I would notice blue lines tearing across the screen horizontally towards the middle. Because this issue wasn't fully acknowledged by Apple, finding troubleshooting steps was kind of difficult. There were a few forums, but nothing really came out conclusive, and almost everything can be distilled down to just try and update your computer. Right now I'm running on the latest version of Big Sur 11.4, and if anything, the issue got a little bit worse, definitely more frequent. So I called an Apple support rep, brought up the issue, and over the course of about 2 days, spent some time messing around with things that they wanted to do. We took some logs, and this was honestly one of the bigger problems for me. It's very distracting to have those lines pop in when I'm trying to edit, and it's even distracting when I'm trying to do simple things on YouTube, just watching a video. And that shouldn't be happening in a new computer. So one of the other more profound issues was that anytime I allowed the Mac to go to sleep, it was unable to wake back up the display. Again, probably tied to that new GPU. This was frustrating because any time that the Mac went to sleep, it resulted in me having to do a hard reboot of the system before I could get my monitor back up. The Band-Aid fix that I came up with for this was I would just never allow the Mac to sleep. While this sounds minor, I shouldn't have to Band-Aid a brand new computer, especially with something so simple as sleep mode. I still really wanted to keep this machine. I wanted to come up with a reason, an excuse to be able to use this as my daily driver, but some of the problems I have with OS X helped kick me a little bit further into the direction of wanting to return this machine. If you're a big fan of OS X, you may not dig everything that I'm saying here, but that's okay. Apparently outrage is pretty good for the YouTube algorithm, so let me know in a comment just how much you hate what I'm saying. First, I want to cover what I like. OS X boots incredibly quickly and handles all of the apps that I wanted to open all of the time with zero lag. I loved working in Photoshop and Lightroom, and it's notable that Photoshop was running emulated because they don't yet have an ARM version of their program available. I think most of that can be attributed to the M1 chip, but I'll also admit that my MacBook Pro runs very, very smoothly, especially on less RAM and an older processor. OS X is a very well optimized operating system, but that's honestly where my praise for it will stop. File management is abysmal next to Windows. Sure, the Spotlight feature allows you to find things pretty quickly, but once you've found it, using Finder is miserable. And The way that they handle icon placement doesn't make any sense. It's not tied to a grid or any sort of structure. It's just chaotic by default. Yes, there are definitely some things that you can do to fix this, but by default, out of the box, if you unzip a file, it lands right on top of the last file that you opened. That's ridiculous, and I can't imagine anyone actually wants that. It's 2021. Why do we not have a better file management system baked into OS X? Additionally, and related to that, I do a lot of my culling within the file manager, and in Windows Explorer, it's fantastic. I'm able to quickly change the thumbnail size of my video clips. I'm able to change the way that things are sorted very, very fast. Now, you could say that some of this is chalked up to me just not being as familiar with OS X, and that may be fair. But their options for view, their options for sorting, and their options for management are just remarkably worse. Even something as simple as wanting to open a file in a new window is now relegated to opening in a tab and dragging that tab out separately to be a separate window. But let's say you're fine with the file management and you don't really mind the way that they do all that because it never really bugged you. We have to talk about the way that OS X handles Windows. It is ridiculous. And no, I'm not talking about running boot camp to run Windows 10 on your Mac computer. I'm talking about window management within the operating system. They don't offer snapping still in 2021. Apple has proven with iOS that they're not afraid to steal great ideas from Android. I don't know why they haven't stolen one of the best ideas from Microsoft. Being able to quickly take a window and drag it to the left side of the screen and have it immediately take up half of the screen is a godsend for productivity. So, to steal an Apple phrase, there's an app for that. I paid $7 for something called Magnet, and if you are an OS X user, I highly recommend it. I consider it indispensable and a necessary part and piece if you use your machine for any sort of work. Magnet adds the ability to snap windows to the left or right-hand side of your screen, or any quadrant in the upper left, upper right, or lower right. And it works fantastically well. I have a small issue that I imagine is fixable in the settings somewhere, but I got frustrated a few times because the workspace management portion of iOS would interfere with my attempt to try and maximize a window. When I would drag something up to the top, it wanted me to create a new workspace, which is basically just a full screen duplication of whatever you're doing. I've never wanted to use that, and maybe I just am not the target audience for that. It just seems like a superfluous thing, and it got in my way several different times. I hated it. Windows management on OS X is a blast from the past. It feels like using a 1995 operating system. Hell, buy Magnet and incorporate it into the new OS X update. It's ridiculous that it's taken this long. My final complaints are more miscellaneous junk that just bugged me while I was using the system. Because I work between PC and Mac all of the time, I downloaded a program by Paragon that allows me to open NTFS files. If you're thinking to yourself, Derek, why don't you just use XFAT because it works on OS X and Windows without the size limitations of FAT32, you'd be correct, except XFAT doesn't offer indexing. And because of that, it's a much more volatile system to store your files. If something happens, if data gets corrupted, or if it gets unplugged accidentally, or you lose power, there's a much higher risk that your data is actually lost. And so I highly recommend if you work between both systems, just buy the program. It's $20, and it allows me to use my really big hard drive that I've used on Windows for years to do long-term storage. And you could even use it as a location for your Time Machine backups. Related to that NTFS program is another gripe that I have with Apple in general. You've probably heard of the walled garden that Apple likes to keep their customers in, and it has some advantages because things tend to work really, really well inside of that garden. But when you want to do anything with your computer that is unique or different, or in this case, trying to add even something as simple as a new file system readability, that becomes a cumbersome task. This actually had to boot into a special mode where I had to type in my password no less than 3 times to give the Paragon software permission to open and run with OS X so that I could see my external hard drives. I think a basic functionality software like this from a major publisher like Microsoft should not be difficult for someone who isn't tech savvy, and it shouldn't be intimidating for someone that isn't tech savvy. And this process is absolutely meant to discourage people from being able to do that. And while it may be more secure, I didn't enjoy how often I had to plug in my password throughout the use of this computer. Pretty much anything I installed, every single question, any type of reboot, always had to have a password. Another minor annoyance is that I have a Magic trackpad and a normal mouse, and I was not able to decouple the gesture control from the Magic trackpad and the scroll wheel control on the mouse. So If I wanted scrolling up on the mouse to work like it does on Windows, then that behavior would feel opposite when I was using the trackpad, and I didn't like that. I was never able to find a fix as a way to keep those separate, and I wanted the trackpad to act differently than a mouse because they're very different tools. And finally, I had a very strange issue after updating to 11.4 where a handful of apps just would not open. It wouldn't give me permission, nothing would allow us to open it, and even an Apple rep was unable to open one of their diagnostic programs. This appears to be a minor bug, and I guess they are working on a fix for this, but that was also pretty frustrating and kind of kicked me out over the edge to saying, okay, well, I've got a couple days left. It's time to call Apple and return this. But all of this is really a testament to how good this machine is. The fact that I still wanted to try and come up with a reason to keep it, despite having so many issues, so many technical hurdles to overcome to making it usable. It's truly incredible what they're doing with the M1 chip, and I'll absolutely be buying this machine again once the fixes roll out. But I don't hold on to technology on the promise of future software updates, and neither should you. Until they fix the M1 Mac, I'll probably still be using my MacBook Pro from 2018 that still runs a treat, and I'll be monitoring all of the forums to see what Apple ends up doing with all of these little problems. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have some problems that maybe I didn't cover, or you didn't have any of these problems with your Mac Mini, I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, all that kind of junk. I appreciate you. I probably love you. Have a good day.